On January 21, 1905, Christian Dior was born in Granville, a seaside town in the north of France. Later, his family moved to the busy city of Paris, where young Christian would grow up. Madeleine and Alexandra Dior had 5 children, and he was the second. His father, Alexandra, owned a very successful fertilizer company. It was thanks to this that the Dior family lived such a comfortable bourgeois life, at least for some time. As a boy, little Christian lived in his own world. He liked anything that was shiny or silly, but flowers and plants were his favorite things. He was also very interested in art, and he hoped to become an architect one day. But his father had different plans for him. Alexandra didn't think his son could make enough money as an artist to support himself. He wanted him to be a diplomat instead. Young Dior didn't want to do it at all, but he gave in to his father's wishes in the end. And in 1925, he went to the well-known École des Sciences Politiques, where he studied political science. So, he would be sure to get a job as a diplomat. After he graduated from college in 1928, Dior found his way back to the creative world. He used his father's money to open a small art gallery. In exchange for the money, his father only asked that the family name not be used in connection with the gallery or on the sign. Christian was accepted quickly. And soon enough, the gallery was open for business. He sold paintings by artists like Picasso, Braque, Cocteau, and Jacob. But in 1931, Christian's mother and older brother both died, and his father lost control of the family business because of the Great Depression. Christian had to close the place again just 3 years after opening it. And money problems were on the way. The deaths of his mother and brother hurt the young Christian a lot, and since his father didn't help him with money, he had to come up with new ways to make money to make ends meet. He sold all of the stocks in the gallery, but this wasn't enough. He had to sleep on a friend's floor because he lost his apartment. But his darkest days were yet to come due to his poor diet and subpar living conditions. Christian contracted tuberculosis, and he has spent a year in recovery so far. But Dior was a survivor, and once he was better, he found new ways to make money. He started out by selling his fashion sketches for about 10 cents each. And not much later, he also began selling sketches of hat designs to newspapers. Dior clearly had talent, and he was offered a job as a design assistant with the Swiss-born but Paris-based courtier, Robert Pijot. Dior later said, "Robert Pijot taught me the beauty of simplicity, which is the only way to get to true elegance." Robert was Dior's first step towards a serious career in fashion, and it opened many doors for him. He didn't get to explore those doors for a few years, though, because the Second World War had started, and Dior was called up by the French army to serve. While some sources say that he served as an officer, others state that he did compulsory farm work. One thing is for sure, though, Dior did not stay until the end of the war. Instead, he opted out, returned to Paris, and began working in haute couture for Lucien. Lucien was more of a businessman than a designer, but he was smart about how he used young people to come up with ideas, which he then put together in a collection. Throughout the remaining years of the war, Design House dressed the women of both Nazis and French collaborators, and Dior's ambition slowly but surely began to sprout into his own ideas. At the end of the war, millionaire Marcel Boussac noticed that he had factories standing idle to keep the machines running. After seeing what Dior could become, he wanted to buy a new fashion house. He offered him the opportunity to receive a defunct fashion house called Felipe Gaston. But Dior refused. By now, Christian was no longer interested in simply working for others. And he surely wasn't going to try and raise a failed company from the dead. Either way, what he wanted was to make a fresh start under his own name, forget trying to revive other people's brands. He wanted to create his own. And luckily for him, Boussac agreed. The millionaire handed him a large sum of money, and with his financial backing, a 41-year-old Dior could now launch his true career. In the same year, he opened his own shop at 30 Avenue Montaigne, a well-known address in Paris. This was the start of the Christian Dior brand. Dior's father died in December of that year, but I guess we can assume that this time he didn't have a problem with his son using the family name. In the following months, Christian began working harder than ever before, and he may have achieved a degree in political science. It quickly became clear that his true education came from somewhere else. Being around so many of the world's best artists gave him a unique sense of style, and his privileged childhood really showed through. The fashion industry as a whole has been following a practical trend for the past 20 years. During the Second World War, when clothes were scarce, this style was at its peak, but Dior had never liked it. He wanted dreams and glitz, and he thought it was time for a change now that the war was over. He wanted to bring back femininity, and a focus on luxury. It took less than 3 months from the brand's creation to launch its first couture collection. Dior named the collection Carol because he loved flowers so much, and the pieces were truly groundbreaking. The look harked back to an earlier Belle Epoque silhouette, and it was romantic, lavish, and feminine all at the same time. Think lifted busts, softly sloped shoulders, clinched corseted waists, and puffy long skirts with taffeta and tulle. The clothes were very nice, and each dress had about 20 yards of fabric on average. As you can imagine, this didn't necessarily make them easy to wear, but the designs were revolutionary, and the collection was a huge success. However, not everyone was pleased, and one person in particular made some snarky remarks: Coco Chanel. At that time, the style of Dior was called New York. Dior's clothes seemed too stiff, fussy, and, most importantly, hard to breathe in. He said that I was trying to make women act like they did in the 1800s. And when Dior visited in the autumn of 1947, demonstrators welcomed him with placards urging him to go home despite the backlash in the US. Dior had persevered by now. He was already a major player in the revival of couture in France, but he wanted to expand even further. And this globalization happened pretty quickly. 1 year after launching his collection, he opened a store in New York City, and with the global launch came an expanded collection as well. Dior understood that to continue his legacy, he needed to provide the entire fashion experience. So, like many other fashion designers, he started by making a perfume. He called it Miss Dior as a tribute to his sister Catherine. Later, he also sold accessories with the Dior name on them. Now, Dior lovers could fully capture the New York look from head to toe by buying the clothes, the jewelry, and the smell. In the following years, the brand continued to flourish. Dior went on to talk to the biggest stars of the time, and by the mid-1950s, the House of Dior was a well-respected fashion empire. It was also around this time that the now world-famous Yves Saint Laurent entered the picture. He liked the young boy's sense of style so much that he wanted him to take over for him when the time came. In 1957, Dior took a holiday in the city of Montecatini, Italy. But while he was there, he had his third heart attack. He died at 52 years old. The entire fashion world felt the loss deeply, and to keep the brand from veering off course, Yves was given the role of artistic director. By using the same fabrics and proportions, the young designers made sure that Christian's legacy and vision didn't die out. But he also introduced a softer silhouette and pieces that were lighter and easier to wear. While many collections were hits, the industry struggled to accept someone else leading the brand. And when Yves was drafted into the French army in 1960, Dior's management didn't object to him leaving following Yves' departure, and Marc Bowen was appointed creative head in the late 60s. Yves Saint Laurent gave the brand a more conservative style and made sure that the designs were more like what Christian Dior had done. He brought a classic idea into the 1960s by making it a little bit simpler. This made it look more modern while keeping the Christian Dior style. With Marc at the helm, Dior was once again the feminine brand that so many people loved, and the collections that followed were a big hit. Marc was quickly credited as the man who kept the Dior label at the forefront of fashion and women's wear. He even said that he had saved the company for more than a decade. Marc kept building the brand, making it even more popular than ever around the world. Stores started popping up in more cities like London and Hong Kong, and the Dior fashion house was catapulted to the top of the industry. In 1978, the Bousso Group went bankrupt, and its assets were also taken away. But Bernard Arnault, the billionaire who is in charge of the LVMH empire right now, was very happy to hear this news. Arnault became chairman, CEO, and managing director of Dior when he took over the company. Over the years, a slew of impressive creative directors also added their own little twists to the brand's looks. Even after Dior was taken over by LVMH, it was still a very good brand on its own. Today, Dior is doing well. It recorded a revenue of €28.7 billion through 2021. And the brand's name is correct, the best of the best in the fashion business. The luxurious fashion house has always strived to create an enduring image of itself, and it has become known for its meticulous attention to detail. It imbues its wearers with an innate sense of style, no matter the season or the time of day. And it doesn't seem like that will change anytime soon. This was the story of Christian Dior, the revolutionary visionary, who almost ended up as a diplomat just to please his father. He finally put on a show after 40 years. But when his first collection came out, everyone took notice, and even though he died more than 50 years ago, his Dior legacy has continued to rule the high seas of fashion ever since. I hope you enjoyed this video. Tell us what you learned from it, and don't forget to check out our channel for more business videos that will make you think.